Good afternoon. I am Morgan Vaughan. This is LTV, and it is Facts at 5. It is Thursday, April 16th, 2020, and I am here again with my co-host, Chrissy Sampson.
Hello, Morgan.
From the East Hampton Star. How are you today?
I'm well, thankfully. How are you?
Pretty well so far. Okay, the big news of today.
New York State on pause has been extended through May 15th. That is Governor Cuomo's mandate of social distancing, non-essential business closures, school closures, that sort of thing. We are going to have to stay the course.
Yep.
And we have a slide of what he said on Twitter this morning.
In a second. There it is. Oh, thank you, Jason. Okay, he said, I know this is hard. I wish I could say this would be over soon, but I can't. We must make decisions based on the science and the data. Human lives are at stake. And that is from today, April 16th, 2020. What did you think about that?
I think it's reasonable. I really think it's reasonable. And today also, Suffolk County Executive Steve Bellone, he echoed Governor Cuomo's sentiments and says that we're still looking at data. It's too early to tell the impact yet. What is exactly going on, because we have to have more than just a few days of a drop of hospitalizations.
Right.
A few days is not enough to really call it, a curve that has fully been flattened.
But even once it's flattened, if everybody just runs outside, that defeats the purpose too.
Exactly. So, there's a real purpose behind all of these mandates, and, the mask mandate as well.
Right. Which is the other thing that last night we weren't quite sure of the date, but now we know that it was that the mask, everybody has to wear a mask if you deal with the public, if you're in public.
And social distancing isn't possible.
And I love this. Any individual who's over the age of 2 and able to medically tolerate a face covering. So if you're over 2, emotionally or physically, you have to wear a face mask. And that it is effective as of 8 p.m. Friday, April 17th, which is for us right now, tomorrow night. All right, statistics.
So in Suffolk County, we are now at 24,425 confirmed positive cases of COVID-19. That is up just under 1,000 from yesterday.
Wow.
And we had an additional 40 deaths, unfortunately, in the last 24 hours. Almost at 700. That tally is 693 now. In East Hampton, again, this is a number that may be underreported because of the second address issue, right. But we have 109 official cases so far of COVID-19 in East Hampton. In Southampton, that is 351.
Wow.
And we are still, not as severe as an area like Islip Town, which has almost 6,500 cases.
Yeah, and that is about 19 cases per 1,000 people who live there, which
Yes.
is a crazy amount of cases. So I hope they're doing okay over there. The next big news of the day is that one of the main coronavirus relief fund sources for small businesses, the CARES Act and for PPP, for Paycheck Protection Program, has now exhausted its resources as of today. So what that means is if you have already started to the process and you were approved, you will get your loan. But if you have not, as of right now, you will not. And they're obviously going to do other, Congress and the Senate will meet again to discuss another bailout, et cetera. But that is as of today.
Is that a surprise to us? Because I understand that it had been the writing was on the wall for the last few days.
I don't know if it's a surprise, but I think it's a disappointment because a lot of people are relying on it. And also from the beginning, it had problems with the website. It had problems with actually applying. So
the volume of applications.
The volume of applications was so big, as of course you're going to see that it's going to be. And so I think that was, it's a disappointment. Hopefully they will get more money, but it is, people are really struggling. So that's from today. Okay, what about the future? As in, if you're a junior in high school, what's going on?
So children are the future, right? So if you are a high school junior planning to take the SAT or the ACT, is it the ACT
I think it's,
as
yeah,
well?
it's the
Okay.
ACT, yeah.
So it's the SAT and the ACT, the two standardized tests that you typically take as you are approaching your junior and senior year of high school. Those are the college entrance exams that many schools rely on your performance, the result, to weigh into your admissions consideration, your admissions decision. Now, one of the things, they may move the tests online. This is according to the New York Times.
Right.
They may move the tests online, but then you have all sorts of other issues about privacy, access.
I mean, just the stuff that we're talking about here, where some people have an amazing setup and they have super duper Ethernet cables and they have a stable family, and other people have a spotty internet and they have a crazy family, or they have a crazy situation, or they're not at home. And so how is that fair? Because at least with the standardized test, it's standardized. You go and you sit in a room and you all have your number 2 pencils and you're all in the same environment. This is interesting because you cannot control the environment in which it's being taken.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why this is so controversial right now. Fortunately, one of the trends had been, even before the pandemic hit, one of the trends was for colleges and universities to go test optional, where you could still take the SAT or the ACT, and, if you score whatever you scored, some schools won't even really have to consider that. For instance, my alma mater, Hofstra University, is now a test optional school.
Oh, wow.
You do not have to take the SAT
Right.
or ACT in order to get in.
Well, I think a lot of other schools are going that way that I just saw in this article, which was Williams and Amherst in Massachusetts and California's public universities. I mean, those are huge. Those are huge schools and school systems. They announced that this test will be optional for applicants seeking to enroll in 2021.
I mean, that's about the best we can expect at this point, and hopefully more schools follow suit.
I saw another story and this is a little bit anecdotal because I don't have the information here, but I thought this was interesting, that this pandemic might even change where you want to go to school. Because maybe you were dying to go to school in LA or New York or Chicago, and now you're like, wait a second. If this, rolling pandemic goes on and all of a sudden I'm sequestered and quarantined to my room, maybe I don't want to go there. Maybe I want to go to some school in Ohio or something in a small town. I mean, there's so much that we're going to see in the future that has become of this that it's very, very interesting. Okay, so I was really struck by this today because it hadn't occurred to me as a problem because I'm not in a small business. So I got this today from the Southampton Business Alliance. This information is from Fred Thiel's office. So this is about registering vehicles with the DMV. Fred Thiel's office is saying, I raised the issue of registering vehicles that were taken off the road in the winter and need to be re-registered in the spring. So that happens out here, obviously, because people are either seasonal or they have businesses that are largely for the summer. Even landscaping businesses are self-proprietary, even things that could be deemed essential. We do re-register in the spring, and this is a fairly widespread practice. And so the DMV responded, as we have said previously, original vehicle registrations and registration transfer transactions require an office visit. And since our offices are currently closed until further notice, customers will need to wait until offices reopen to process their transaction. Customers may wish to visit our website. We apologize for the inconvenience and thank you for your understanding. So Fred Thiel's office has written a letter that you can then sign and send. But I thought it was interesting. I'm writing to request immediate consideration for a new policy for NYS DMV regarding vehicle registration. Many essential service businesses lay up vehicles for the winter season and have no way to re-register at this time. Likewise, business and individuals needing new vehicles may purchase them but cannot use them. So this, I thought, was a very interesting manifestation of what we were talking about how things, we don't even really know all of the little dominoes along the way that are going to fall.
That's a really good analogy, Morgan. It's that we're kind of building the airplane as we fly in a lot of ways as well, to use another analogy. But we're still every day discovering what this means for us, for our businesses, for interacting with society around us and the laws.
Well, I mean, I think at first when this happened, when there was a quarantine, everybody was like, okay, it's going to be 2 weeks and we'll see you later and it's going to be cool. And now all of a sudden we're like, okay, week 4 and my sort of need to get my, money and I got to start my business. And so it's really become an issue that we hadn't anticipated because we didn't foresee it taking this long. And in speaking of how long it's taking, that is something that I think that Governor Cuomo's tweet really addressed, is that everybody wants this to be over, but we can't push it, unfortunately.
Yes, and another note that came across the announcements today was that President Trump, speaking of recovery, and he's weighing economic recovery and economic return at this point, he appointed our local representative Lee Zeldin to the White House Committee on Economic Reopening.
Oh, interesting.
So, Lee Zeldin has been helpful in getting a lot of equipment from the federal government, PPE,
right,
masks from the federal government delivered directly to Suffolk County. So there could be an argument that he will represent our interests at the White House. So that remains to be seen, but we hope for the best.
Yep, definitely. Speaking of good news and PPE. So PPP, which is it?
PPE, personal protective equipment.
There's PPP and PPE. Okay.
Yes, personal protective equipment. The Aboff family, they run the Aboff's paint stores. They have donated 3,200 N95 respirator masks to Stony Brook Southampton Hospital. They've donated to several healthcare providers on Long Island. In total, they have donated 17,000 masks and to emergency medical service outlets in Amagansett and Huntington.
That is fantastic.
And so the East Hampton Star is reporting the masks are typically used by painters so they don't breathe in aerosolized paint fumes and sanding particles. But that is also, the equipment is also good enough that it filters out virus particles and other pathogens from the air.
And this is the sine qua non of respirators. This is the one that everybody wants.
Exactly.
Creme de la creme, if you will, per se.
So Matthew Aboff, he's part of that family who owns the stores. His quote was, "We've been part of the community since 1929, and we wanted to give back to the community that's been supporting us over the last 90 years."
Oh, that's fantastic.
So thank you so much to Aboffs.
That is great. I love that. I love that story. Okay, so next we have, wait a second. Do you have anything else you want to add for today? April 16th, Thursday?
Just today is the day that most of the local papers publish, the East Hampton Star, the Southampton Press, the Sag Harbor Express. I know the East Hampton Press comes out on Wednesdays and the Independent comes out on Mondays, but today is the day that you can start really digging into the local papers. What they come out with every week is phenomenal. Everyone's working so hard in this industry. And that's where we get a lot of our news from for Facts at 5.
Yeah.
But you don't forget to support your local newspapers. You can subscribe online, and so you don't have to actually go to a store and pick up the paper. So that's a good way to get news that fills in the gaps in between Facts at 5.
That is excellent, excellent advice, Chrissy. Thank you. Okay, so next we have Angela LaGreca, and she has an interview with Bridget Fleming, and that's the next thing on Facts at 5. So stay safe, stay home, and watch this.
Thank you, Morgan and Chrissy. We're very pleased today at Facts at 5 on LTV to feature an interview with Bridget Fleming, Suffolk County. Let me start that again because of Let me start again. We're very pleased to have Bridget Fleming with us. She is the Suffolk County Legislator for the 2nd District, and she is our guest today at Facts at 5. Bridget, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
I was a government major, and I actually had to look up what exactly the county legislator does, because some people might not know that. So in a short sentence or two, what is your role? Sure. Just so that people might not know.
No, it's a great question. So I am a legislator. I represent the towns of East Hampton, Southampton, Shelter Island, and a little bit of Brookhaven. in the Suffolk County Legislature. So Suffolk County is 1.5 million people. It goes from Babylon on the south to Smithtown on the north, all the way out to Orient on the north and Montauk in the south. So I represent the South Fork. There are 18 legislative districts. Mine is one of them, the second largest, as you can imagine.
Yes.
So there's a county executive and a legislature, and then the courts. That's what runs Suffolk County. So we're responsible for overseeing mainly the budget and the provision of resources, from everything like the highway department to some public health issues. Pretty much, you don't see it. We do a lot to run the government.
Right. Well, and in your district, that's the South Fork is over 80,000 residents. So obviously that's a lot of people who are affected. And obviously in terms of public health and safety, what could be more pressing right now than this pandemic? What is your typical day been like since, I would say, I mean, the last time I saw you, life was very different. We were at LTV at a benefit for the Ellen Hermanson Breast Cancer Foundation, and that was in February. What is a typical day for you like right now? And then I want to get to unemployment benefits, paycheck protection, small business.
Sure. It does seem like that was a lifetime ago, just in February when we were all socializing and supporting great organizations. But now it's pretty much all COVID all the time. And my day is very varied. For the most part, we on my team are doing everything we can to provide resources and information to the community as things change and develop, in the course of this crisis. So March the 8th was the first positive COVID test in Suffolk County. And actually it was 2 days later that we started having daily updates with the Commissioner of Health and the county executive. We began to get updated not only on what was happening in terms of the transmission of the virus and how it moved through the community, but also what sort of resources were being stood up. So for the most part, I sort of act as a conduit between the folks in the community who have needs and concerns and government resources, try to make sure that the folks who are setting up the government resources know what the needs are, and that the people who have the needs know where the resources are. So very busy every day, kind of putting out fires and trying to stay on top of it.
Okay. Well, let's start with something that obviously everyone is got on their mind, unemployment benefits. I mean, there are so many tens of thousands of people who have declared need unemployment benefits. And there was a lot of difficulty in even applying for it. What has changed? I believe there's a new system in place. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, lots of good news on the unemployment front. So Thursday of last week, the Department of Labor in New York State recognized that it wasn't working. The system wasn't working. We had 3.3 million people in one day applying for benefits. So obviously the system needed to be fixed. And they did it. They actually hired 1,000 additional people that are now dedicated 100% to answering these lines. And then they set up with Verizon and Google, they worked to set up a technical fix to try to clear the logjam. So now, not only are the benefits enhanced, and I'll tell you about that in just a second, but the actual process of getting them should be less frustrating. So people should know that last week you had to apply and then try to call, and it was brutally frustrating, especially for people who are anxious about paying the rent and feeding their families. So what they've done now is you apply online, and then you will be called back by someone at unemployment within 72 hours. And I'm told that it's working well. It's very important for a number of reasons. First of all, it's been expanded to 39 weeks. So there'll be quite a bit of time that you'll be eligible. Folks who are not traditional W-2 wage earners, who in the past wouldn't have been eligible for unemployment, that's really important. That includes some sole, folks who own their own businesses can now access unemployment for themselves. In certain instances, that's very important. And there's additional money. The federal government in the CARES Act added $600 to the weekly unemployment benefits. And now New York State has also added $600 a week. So there's a lot more available to a lot more people for a lot longer time, which is why you can imagine the systems are really overloaded in trying to get people through the pipeline. My understanding is it's
Right.
working better. It does require some patience, obviously. A lot of folks who are accessing these systems never in their wildest dreams thought they would have, to go to unemployment. And so there are some challenges in terms of the communication and getting the systems working and the applications through. But it's very, very important that you step up and ask for those benefits, because the point of it really is that when we turn the lights back on, when we're allowed to go back outside our homes, we're going to be able to have an economy that works, especially here on the East End, where we have so many second homeowners, so many restaurants, service industry folks. We need those businesses to be able to be alive and kicking with their feet underneath them. So those unemployment benefits are very important. Angela, I've lost your sound.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I do want to talk about economic recovery on the East End, but I want to ask you to direct people for unemployment benefits and obviously the small business, the PP, the protection, the different ways that they can get assistance. Where's the best place for them to go? I mean, we've been putting stuff on our crawl, but I know on your legislature, on the Suffolk County Legislator website, there's a lot of information as well. And we will put that up.
Unemployment benefits, you go through the regular unemployment website. So just Google unemployment New York State, government, and it'll take you right there. Right. That's what's new, that system is much more user-friendly than it was even a week ago.
Okay.
The other aspect, Angela, about the small businesses and what's available for the Payroll Protection Act and the disaster relief funds, those you get through your regular depository bank, which is really good news because those are relationships that are already in place. So there are some challenges, though, without a doubt, because again, it's like drinking through a fire hose. So many people are trying to get those benefits. And let me emphasize, too, that is a finite amount of money. We are hoping that CARES Act 4 is going to come to be, but it gets more and more challenging for things to happen in Washington. But for now, it sounded like a ton of money, $2.2 trillion, but it is a finite amount. And I don't even know now how much longer it'll last. So it's super important. Even if you have questions, just go to your bank, get an application in. Even if it's incomplete, get it in, because you need to get a place in line to access those benefits. I'm hosting a Q&A on Zoom next week. It's Wednesday, April the 22nd from 1 to 2 p.m. And people can call my office, which is 631-852-8400, and get the the login information. It's a Zoom. It's going to be a Zoom call. And much like what we're doing now, where people will have a chance to speak to someone from the Stony Brook Small Business Development Center. He's a terrific guy. He's very focused not only on how to help individuals right now and businesses right now, but really thinking about how to reframe your business plan to pick up once we get back to work, because there will likely be a burst of activity. We've got a ton of people here on the East End. There is some economic opportunity there. So we really want small businesses and arts organizations, cultural organizations to start thinking about how they're going to be ready to take advantage of those opportunities so they can get their legs back under them and we can make sure that we can seamlessly move into a revitalized economy.
Well, let's talk about that, obviously, because there are a lot of small businesses that are hurting right now in the East End, and we need them. And is there a plan that's in formation, or what are we thinking in terms of moving forward? Once, we're talking about a lot about flattening the curve and more testing, which I know that there have been more testing opportunities, but we want more. But what about business? Suffolk County business recovery. Where do you see that going?
Well, you know what? It's a dynamic and fluid situation. We don't know, unlike Superstorm Sandy, for instance, where we had the devastation, the storm was over, we knew how to start rebuilding. We're still not clear. We listen carefully to the governor every day and we try to watch the models and the charts, but we still don't know when it is we're going to have a vaccine, when it is people are going to be safe to restart the economy overall, or how we're going to be directed to do that largely through the federal and state government. So what my goal is today is to ensure that small businesses are able to survive, that the relief that's being provided at the federal and state level, including, for instance, some of the forgiveness that's happening on late fees and penalties for rent payments, that kind of thing. We need to make sure that people are liquid and able to maintain their payroll, or that their workers are on unemployment, so that these small businesses that have such small margins are at least intact to the extent that they'll be able to take advantage of relief as it starts, appearing on the horizon. It's very challenging, but to figure out what that relief is going to look like, and so how to plan for it. But for now, I think the most important thing is to keep your business plan intact as much as possible with regard to expenditures, and use these benefits as revenue that you would have otherwise had, so that you can continue to stay on a level playing field as much as possible, or I should say stay on an even keel. I know that's crazy to even think of, but that's the goal, to try to hold these businesses so that they maintain to the extent that they can, so they're ready to restart when we're able to leave our homes. No, I can't hear you.
Okay. In terms of, because things seem to change by the minute, or by, at least for sure by the day, I know that there are updates, and how do you suggest Suffolk County residents receive these local updates? It's the best way for them to get information.
Sure. Let me tell you, you can text to the COVID Suffolk line is really important. I don't know if you ever crawl for any of this stuff, but you text to COVID Suffolk, COVID SUFFOLK. You text that to the number 67283. So text COVID Suffolk to 67283, and it's really very helpful. You get regular updates. My office, yes. I have a website, so Bridget Fleming at the Suffolk County Legislature. There are a number of fact sheets, and we try to keep updated on guidance for businesses and individuals. That's another place. I do an update pretty much every day in the middle of the day to just sort of let people know what's new. I do that on Twitter and Facebook.
Right.
And then, of course, I think the governor and the county executive both have very, very informative daily updates. I find the governor's on Twitter, because if you miss his actual live update, you can go to his Twitter feed and watch the update. I find that very, very helpful from the standpoint
yes.
of a municipal government. But I would encourage you too, if you're in my district, please call my office, 852-8400. We do have one staff member in the office, and then it's also, the phone is rolling over, so we can certainly answer questions. There are so many. I mean, I volunteered on the 311 line not long ago. And the breadth of impacts is really astonishing, from people wondering if they can get tested, how they get tested, whether they're sick, to I even answered the call of a little girl who couldn't find her homework packet online, and her dad didn't speak English. So I helped them find her homework packet. So, I mean, it's just, and people wondering, of course, how to access financial benefits and mental health issues.
So they can, so they can call for the 311 with any COVID-19 related issues, right? Which is very useful.
They're really, really helpful there. And I do want to just mention, because I know our time is short, that mental health issues are very real and very important. And I encourage everyone to take care of themselves, not try to be too tough. If you are feeling any kind of strain, it's very natural. We're all in this together, and it's just a very crazy, unprecedented, difficult time filled with stress. And there are resources available at that 311 line.
Yes, and we know, we've talked on Facts at 5. We have a great crawl. We have a lot of information that goes on our LTV crawl all 24 hours. But I know in terms of mental health, I think a lot about, we know that there are disparities in how this virus has affected different communities, the Latino, the Black community, and women. I think a lot in terms of domestic abuse and people who are forced to stay home. We know that there's information on the site, but the retreat is still operating. I mean, what kinds of feeling do you get from the community being out there, even though you're sheltering in place, but you are out there in a sense, you know, obviously, you know, what are you getting from the community
I think
and what's needed?
There are two things. People are really feeling strain, and people are also feeling are responding to the needs and concerns of their neighbors. So yesterday, for instance,
Right.
I volunteered at the Southampton Town's ASAP program. That's a great program if you're a senior or a vulnerable person who doesn't want to go to the grocery store, or even Herrick's Hardware, which will deliver a filter for an oil burner, I found out yesterday. There's this service where, and people are volunteering, but that's the sheriff's department, my staff, staff at the town are stepping up and filling those needs for people. People want to help to the extent that they have the information they need to help. One of the biggest issues is still the personal protective equipment. We still have big issues. Even the medical providers have problems. Tomorrow, I'm going to be delivering to the veterans home, the state veterans home up in Setauket, a number of Tyvek coveralls, because this is basically a nursing facility in part for veterans, and they have had impact. You know, they've had positive cases, and they've even had residents who've passed away from COVID. And so it's a really challenging circumstance for their staff. They're very hands-on. They've known these individual residents for many years. Some of them have dementia. It is a challenging population. But can you imagine trying to work in that situation and not having the gown? No. So we found that the director of the program reached out to me and asked if there were construction companies that might have coveralls that would work. And sure enough, One Source Tool in Southampton stepped up, Riverhead Building Supply stepped up, Green Bubble Construction. And so tomorrow I'll be delivering at least 100 of those coveralls to the veterans home. Those are the things we're seeing happen, Angela, throughout the community.
I understand.
The need is extraordinary. The need is really almost impossible to fathom, but people are willing and so big-hearted. So that's another one of my big jobs, is to try to put those resources and the needs together and get, you know, the relief that people want to give to the places where they're needed.
And in terms of, I have one more question because we are almost out of time, and I hope you come back and talk to us again with future updates. In terms of testing, which is always on everybody's mind, I know we've had some new testing facilities. Where are we with that? Because are we going to be having more places for testing?
Yes.
In Suffolk County?
So the county is doing, local governments, county and state, are doing everything they can to increase testing. Two different types of testing. There's diagnostic testing, do you have it or not? And then there is antibody testing, which would let you know whether you did have it, and might have a couple of things. One, plasma that will be helpful to donate because it's important for a medical treatment for the severely ill, but also that you might have an immunity, which would mean that you're more likely to be able to safely go back to the workplace. So we do not have adequate testing in our communities. I believe we need the federal government to step up on this. I think we should have stepped up a long time ago, but with the supplies that we have, we continue to expand. So you have up in Setauket, you have the Stony Brook drive-through site. There are now 3 sites that Hudson River Healthcare have set up with the county. One is in Riverhead. It's the regular HRH facility there. You can call. Do you want the number? Is 845-553-8030, and that's to get an appointment for the Riverhead facility. There's also now ProHealth has a quick drive-through that's up in Riverhead as well. So we're doing everything we can. It's not enough, but we'll keep pushing at it. And 311 is a perfect place to call to find out what testing is appropriate and available to you. I'm committed to continue to push to expand the testing, but for now, 311 is a good place to go for central questions.
Suffolk County Legislator Bridget Fleming, thank you so much for your time, and be safe and well.
Thank you for spreading this information. So critically important. Everyone, please be well and healthy. Thank you, Angela.